Makariva. Professor Lee will speak next. He is a theoretical ecologist, founder of the field of ecological complexity, and he's currently doing research on the dynamics of the humans and nature's complex systems and interactions. And he is going to tell us a little bit about this research and how we should look at these interactions. Professor Lee, and there's a button that gives you the 20 minutes up here. Are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Just move in here. Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair, for your nice introduction. What I'm talking about today is emphasize ecological complexity and sustainability, cope with climate change and the rebalancing with nature. So part of the fundamental physics part, my two collaborators already demonstrate and show the fundamental nature of those problems and how you can deal with it. But what I would like to do is a little bit soft part, is more emphasize the nature of the ecological systems and how and what we right now we are and how we can cope with that and develop some kind of the theoretical and the methodology framework to helping us cope this problem. Look at the natures. You know, we have many different kinds. Okay, if you look at the wetland, you have the tropical forest in Australia. That's the Lake Morris, is the Neolacans. You can also look at what's the Riverside around Palm Spring, desert, semi-arid environment, And also you can look at what a lot of the agricultural land today. And more so, you can see those kind of a mega city, okay? So if you look at it in a global scale, roughly, we probably only have about 22% of land really is wild. Only produce about 11% net primary productivity. So which means is, basically, is nature is within human systems. It's not human, you know. Before we always talking about thinking we have a lot of nature, you know, we have the resources, everything we can use. But really, if you look at those numbers, actual nature is actually inside, within our human system. So that's significant, and we have to deal with, especially my two Russian colleagues talk about biotic pump, how important for the water circulation. So that thing is, if we lost those fundamental biotic component of the entire planet, then we're facing a major, big problem. It's not just we're looking for alternative energy or something, but water, we don't have the alternative. Everybody have to drink the water. Okay. So even we look at like the China, the Yellow River Delta, that's due to the water problem, reduced the last like 10, 20 years, 40%, cause those even the shrinking with the settlement. So those all relate those issues. Of course, we have been looking at more on those things. Yeah, look at the CO2 and climate change. So under those, I think this morning also the one of expert also talking about the millennial assessment. Just give you a rough, just brief this idea is look at how nature can provide to us. That's in addition to my colleague talking about biotic pump related with water circulation part. Okay, look at all the other things nature can provide. And more so, if we look at what right now our systems, then we have to thinking about how we can do about it, how we can restore those fundamental features and the surface from the nature, from those biotic systems. So in that regard, we have been developed what's so-called ecological complexity theory. That's way back to more than 20 years ago from theoretical aspect, and now more and be recognized. I think in the 2000, Ecological Society of America and the British Ecological Society both, they really have the joint meeting. And in that joint meeting, they made a statement, something like the ecological complexity will be the next frontier or frontier for 21st century ecological study. Okay? So basically, ecological complexity is referred to those complex interplay between all living systems and their environment. The part is, if anyone knows the environment or environmental science and ecology, probably you say, well, yes, you know, that's what ecology about it. But second part is more important, is that emergent property, which those property cannot come from the individual, cannot breaking down to each individual piece. They have to be in the systems level, emerged as whole. Okay. And the concept of ecological system complexity stress the richness of ecological systems. That's what I showed in the beginning, all different kind of ecological systems, including urban ecosystems. And their capacity for adaptation and self-organization. So that's very important, is that systems' fundamental feature, they can adapt and self-organize. And also, as a science, as one of discipline of ecological research, we try to really emphasize the quantitative and the integrative approach towards better understanding of those complex and nonlinear interaction. That could be the behavior, biological, chemical, ecological, environmental, physical, social, even social, and the cultural component. That's also very, very important. Actually, early this year, I went to the Xishuangban, that's the one considered one of 25 in a global scale, the hot, biodiversity hotspot. But because the economic growth in China, so have a lot of the rainforest, really you see those green stuff, but it's not really rainforest. They're all for rubber industry, they're planted. That's not. So the functionality of the rainforest is lost, or is losing. Okay, so that's something, that is directly related to a lot of local people, their culture associated with that. Also, we can look at the Maya cultures in Mexico and other regions. All associated, those lot of fundamental nature is associated not just the component provide ecological nature component, but also have the social, cultural, ethnic, all those spiritual stuff. So that gone, there will be all associated with that will be lost. So that affect, sustain, influenced by all living systems, including humans. Then what we emphasize those questions, the interface of a traditional discipline, and we emphasize not just explain, but eventually we want to predict the outcome of such kind of interaction. And those kind of research is not just theoretically, but also we eventually, and right now what we are doing is try to solve the real-world environmental problem. Actually, several experts this morning also mentioned about complexity of socio-economic systems. So what are the complex systems? Of course, different people may give you different definition, okay? Just like system science, what is systems also have many different definitions. But here, I would like to emphasize that is characterized by strong, usually is a nonlinear interaction between the parts, and a complex feedback loop that make difficult to distinguish cost from effect, significant time and space lag, discontinuity, threshold, and limit. So a lot of the systems feature, like this morning expert talk about, the transition, critical transition, and the catastrophe change, those things, they're all associated with fundamental complex systems nature. So you have many different kinds, you can classify that, but I think is more important, at least from the biological aspect and the ecological aspect. We are more interested to looking into the self-organizing and the involved complexity, because that's not just relate how the systems are where they are, but where they come from, where they go. Different people may give different the focus of the current research. Since I'm the more toward the theoretical part, so I more emphasize the methodology. And basically, the ecological complexity current study most emphasize nonlinearity, self-organized hierarchy and emergent property, threshold criticality and phase transition related to ecological systems, and also scaling issues. As we know, any experiment, especially we talk about global change, if you look at those publications, and this morning I think also one expert addressed those about uncertainty issues, and we have to make a decision. If you look at those literatures, not like others, experimental ecological research always have error bars, but they only have one number, because that's the whole Earth. That's only you cannot do the experiment with this entire planet. So that's the major issue, is how you can transform or translate the research results in probably in a lab, maybe even less than 1 by 1 meter, to even regional or state level or nation or or the continental level. We're even not talking about the entire global scale. So that means we have to deal with those scale invariance, scale covariance, and more importantly, how those in one scale change, cascading to another scale, the consequence. Okay, what's what I use the cross-scale dynamics, okay, how to link it. So I'm not going to the detail because they have many different techniques and the methodology have been developed. What I would like to switch the gear a little bit is what are my interests, how the human interact with the biosphere scale. You can look at the human through the effect different human species and other biota. Because I put the human is huge because, obviously, like I said, those numbers, only 22% of land is wild. So basically all of, somehow it's a human directly impact. So then we have to look into the complex relationship, okay, ecological systems and human systems. They have similar threat, risk, and change. How the link between the two things and how to understand the complex interaction and how we can use those understanding to cope with the climate change and the rebalance with nature. So they have some essential promise, the kind of cornerstone for us to make those kind of linkage. We know the human activity associated with change in the key resources and the driver, CO2, nitrogen, water, sea level rise. By the way, the CO2 is not all the bad. A lot of people thinking the CO2 because we have to rely on that. Photosynthesis, we have food, all the clothes, the fiber, all from that, from the natural way. They still need that. And those changes can be classified as either pulses as a discrete event or process is a continuous event. So individual species that can involve adaptation to capture and use the resources and to respond various environmental drivers. Therefore, the change in the resources availability and the environmental driver are likely to have significant consequence for species interaction, community structure, and ecosystem functioning. Of course, there will be direct associated ecosystem service, what they provide to the civilization. So human social systems are also spatially and temporal dynamic and also respond to and cause the pulse or press event. So therefore, those kind of a driver and a dynamics different than the ecological systems, but direct affect ecological processes like tax law, regulation, preference, or behavior. Then ecological processes have feedback that affect human social systems. Now, one example, probably a lot of people know, in Southern California, always you see the news, the fire, So where they come from? They come from a lot to do with nitrogen deposition. So where's the nitrogen deposition come from? Our car, we're driving, especially rush hour time, take hours to bypass the downtown LA. So those things that have directly will change from initially organism level response to the community reordering, then entire community change. Now the systems, of course, like the people talking about the resistance, resilience, yes, they do. So then the system have different trajectory. Now, when we introduce the human into the picture, then file, then of course nitrogen deposition introduce exotic invasive species. They actually facilitate the processes because the annual plants produce a lot of the biomass, dry biomass, very easy because they, center on the wind is come the heat, the stuff, and very dry. So very easy for anyone through the cigarettes or whatever to have the fire come out. So basically the fire and facilitating the invasive species nitrogen deposition, the whole from human activity link with the nature. Then that's the part of the work I work with the German colleague in the University of Kiel. This time is the largest German long-term ecological research site in the Bonhof Lake. That's Professor Felix Müller. That's also part of NATO program and the so-called environmental security, the highlight. So we basically propose the framework, so-called function of nature, to look at how we can, from ecological aspect, emphasize the sustainable development. So basically, you have to base on the self-organizing processes. To maintain the functional nature is basically its ability for future self-organization of the ecosystems be supported. Then you can achieve so-called eco-target or ecological integrity, or whatever you, the name right now have a lot used in the literature. Then we can look at, for example, through those basic processes of ecological self-organization, through this regulation function, then provide all the other service to the civilization, the human society. And also it's important to recognize all those understanding with the ecological systems. We don't have a good way. I think also many speakers talking about the communication. That's also important, for example, how you can translating those so complex the ecological knowledge and the principle and the research to the policy and the decision maker. So that's the one way we have been thinking, at least under the NATO environmental security framework, and also recently EU have the so-called water framework initiative, something like that. So basically try to develop all different indicators to help understanding those nature and translating them direct to policy. So have the different measurement, and this basically can look at the systems, how you can, well, this is mainly based on the German LTR, long-term ecological research side work. Of course, you different indicator you can develop as well. Basically, we use that 8 to characterize in the ecological system the different way and emphasize their or quantify the capacity for self-organization as the kind of a way to communicating the research and the policy and the decision maker. A lot of time we know, some maybe the toxic or chemical, probably 0.001 will kill people. But if we put all together something, other data will be thousands different dimensions. Then those politicians will be totally ignored. They know what this really means. So we try to use this way and put what is ideal situation, what is marginal, what is not acceptable through that, and relatively project all the different systems in how the performance. So then immediately get their attention and recognize the importance. Due to the time limit, I'm not going to too much detail. For this part, I just make a couple comments on that. Is that Right now, we try to looking for all alternative energy in a many different way. But in the reality is that actually we have the problem to really to talk about what is ecological consequence of nature. A lot of time is no free lunch, okay? Now this table, we basically calculate what the nature provide to us and what civilization right now we use and how that impact to the systems. I don't want to go to detail, but I want to only show one of the case, wind power. Many people believe, that's true just based on the energy budget. The wind power is pretty much about 20 times the energy value than the 2005 DOE, the data for the global energy consumption. So then people may think that's a lot, but reality based on all the Russian colleague of collaboration, the biotic pump, thinking about it, you have to build a lot of the windmill to collect them. So what consequence? The basically like the forest, you build a connection, increase this vertical coupling, so then the water from the ocean cannot go to the inland. So you will have more desert. So basically, the consequence of the windmill, those things, is just like a deforestation, okay? So that's basically, that's already talked, that's some data show that. So basically, at the best, the wind power only can provide us like 5%, okay? So that's mean no free lunch. Thinking about it, we're thinking we can economic development, okay, we can booming continually without change our behavior, the way our living. No, that's the way cannot be. So basically our conclusion is that at the best, those alternative energy can only provide about 10% of the global energy need. And in order to maintain the global, the system stability, will not have more energy. Actually, we need to reduce at least 1 order of magnitude energy use based on the 2005 DOE the data. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our final speaker today.